we're waiting. We're all waiting to see how the Seahawks fill out that coaching staff. And Paul was talking about how he's getting like, all right, let's go. Let's get it going. Why is it taking so long? Is there a chance that the Seahawks are waiting for the Super Bowl to be over because some of their targets could be on one of these two or both of these staffs?
Yeah, that started to occur to me about halfway through this week, just because I thought, okay, well, it's pretty recent that he's gotten hired, and maybe it's just taken him a little bit of time. But it seems like that they would have that done by now, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, look, we haven't been through this in 14 years, so we don't really know. And I think, with Pete, I don't think everybody was sitting around waiting for, okay, who are his assistants, but because this is such a huge change that I think people are maybe getting a little uneasy. And then, I started thinking, hey, maybe there are some guys that they're waiting for, to get, wait till their season is done, and they've been patient. And John answered the question. Well, he didn't really answer it. He was kind of like, I guess I'm not 1,000%, but somebody asked the question about what if the Ravens had gone to the Super Bowl, and I feel like that was the guy that they absolutely wanted. So you're not going to not hire the guy because of a couple of weeks.
Not if you think unless you feel like, well, there's going to be a ton of competition. We like this guy almost as much.
Yeah.
There's no certainty that our main target is coming with us. So maybe you're left with nothing, bird in the hand kind of theory. I don't know. I don't know how close it is. Like, yeah, we're happy with either of these guys. This would be number one. Here's 1A, whatever. But just looking at the staff, some of on the offensive side of things, any of these names, and Lefko did a good job putting all these names up here, like as far as offensive assistants for the 49ers, you've got Anthony Lynn, assistant head coach and running backs coach. You've got Brian Greasy as the quarterbacks coach. You've got Clay Kubiak, assistant quarterbacks coach. Leonard Hankerson for the wide receivers, Chris Forrester for the run game, Brian Fleury, Joe Graves, James Gregg, all assistants on the O-line and tight ends. Any of those names, before we get to the Chiefs side of things, any of those look like possible candidates or not really?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, look, I know Anthony Lynn because we played together, and when he was the coach of the Chargers, I remember going down and talking to him on the field, and yeah, I think he is. And he's an assistant head coach, but I don't know that he has any kind of connection with these guys. The other one that pops up to me is the assistant quarterback coach, Clay Kubiak, because, we talked to Gary Kubiak, and, he we didn't even talk about when he was a head coach of the Broncos and when they won the Super Bowl. In Super Bowl, I think it was Super Bowl 50. But, I think, he's got a very strong tie, Kubiak does, with the Shanahan, so I felt like he's probably not going to make a lateral move. So, but yeah, I mean that's the other thing is you sit there and look, okay, who's available, and then it's like, well, maybe they like it where they are, and if you're not able to offer them a whole bunch more money or opportunity or anything like that, then maybe it'll be just kind of, okay, who's left.
Yeah. Well, on the Chiefs side, you've got Matt Nagy. Most people know him. He's the OC now. He doesn't get the credit for their offense because it's Andy Reid. And we heard LaShawn McCoy saying that, it's Andy Reid that calls these plays, and he's the one responsible. So Nagy maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves, or maybe he doesn't deserve it. I don't know how much Andy really controls, but you've got him. You've got a guy that I know, Andy Heck, who's the offensive line coach. And then Todd Pinkston is the running backs coach, Tom Melvin tight end, Joe Blameyer is their passing game coordinator, and David Girardi is their quarterbacks coach. Any of those feel like, all right, I could see them waiting for this guy? Yeah,
I mean, Matt Nagy, I think for them it's going to be the most important position they fill as offensive coordinator. Just because, you got Mike McDonald, and
you feel like you got your defensive coordinator
pretty much set, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he said I'm calling the plays.
Yeah.
So
exactly,
yeah.
And he's got Leslie Frazier to kind of help him out with it, and he's assistant head coach. Is
assistant
that right?
head coach. Yep.
So at age 64, which is kind of interesting because usually you tag the younger guys like Kyle Shanahan did. He had with Anthony Lynn. Mm. Now Anthony Lynn's not a young guy, and he's been around, but usually it's that assignment is to kind of help a younger coach and Leslie Frazier's not really going anywhere, probably at age 64. But yeah, I mean, you look at Andy Heck is kind of interesting. I mean, they've had a good offensive line there. They've drafted really well, but you always assume that, okay, well, they've had high draft choices on their offensive line, and he's protected Patrick Mahomes. But also, you could say that Patrick Mahomes makes him look pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. What did McCoy say? Well, he hid behind Mahomes.
Yeah.
Talking about the enemy is what he was saying. Reid called all the plays, and then he hid behind Mahomes.
Right.
Basically made it sound like he just stood there. He had no impact on anything.
Yeah. What's funny about Andy Heck, really just quick personal story.
Yeah.
Like when we played together,
He was a Notre Dame guy.
First rounder out of Notre Dame, and we didn't really hit it off. We didn't like each other much. And I pretty friendly with most guys, but him and I just never. And then when I went to Denver, he said something about me in the paper, something about how I always thought I was the smartest guy in the room. I was like, what? Me? Seriously? That wasn't you? And so we had this little squabble and things like that. I saw him like 5 years ago. Couldn't have been a better meeting. We sat for 10 minutes, talked about family, where we've been, all that. Just kind of, when you get away from the game and you're not the competitor that you are, I mean, you're always kind of tightly wound.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool. But I think he's done a good job there. Now, I don't know how much of it is that they've drafted really well at offensive line, or is it that Andy is doing a really good job developing him? I think he's a good coach. So, but these are just guys that I know. I mean, a lot of these people we don't know that much about, but you try to get the guys that are the best names off of whatever you're looking at, like whoever the linebacker coach is for the 49ers, you're thinking probably does a pretty good job, right?
Yeah, and what'll be weird to me is if they do wait beyond the, and it feels like, unless there's an announcement today or tomorrow, and I don't think they would on Saturday, before the Super Bowl, you'll hear about it after the Super Bowl. So assuming it does play out that way, that we hear about the coaches after the Super Bowl, but none of them are attached to either of those teams, that'll feel kind of strange. Like, well, all right, so what were you waiting for? Maybe they'll interview some of these some of these coaches from these two staffs, and maybe just figure, all right, he didn't say what I was hoping to hear, or his philosophy is different, or maybe they're waiting to interview some of them. Doesn't mean they're going to get the job, perhaps. So I guess that part would make sense. But
I'm curious also how often this happens. And now I think if you have a Patrick Mahomes, that kind of a quarterback, you probably consult him a little bit. But I'm curious if they would bring Geno in, if they're like, hey, this is our guy, we're going with Geno. I mean, it sounds like that's the case.
Yeah.
Mike McDonald talked about how much he admired him. He shared the story after they beat the crap out of us. He went over and talked to Geno and told him how much he admired him and thought he did a really good job. So, I'm curious if maybe he'll, I don't want to say run it past him. Like, do you know this guy?
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of connection or anything, or any kind of preference? What kind of coach do you like to have? I mean, that's your quarterback, and not like he would make the final decision, but I'm curious if they would, at least kind of include him a little bit, maybe just pick his brain a little bit.